Hello, welcome to this very special edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace reporting live here at the 15th Pittsburgh International Jazz Festival here in downtown Pittsburgh. Blessing the band stage is educator, griot, trumpeter, composer, percussionist, Etienne Charles. Tonight here on the Pace Report, you are going to witness history. Etienne just released an album earlier this summer titled Gullah Roots, and the album features 10 tracks that explore the relationship between African American, Afro-Caribbean diasporas, and Africa. Now, this album was co-produced by Quentin E. Baxter, who's the co-founding member of the Grammy Award-winning group Ranky Tanky. And what he did was he went to the Gullah Geechee communities of coastal South Carolina and Georgia to learn the music, learn the culture, as well as interact with the community to put together this music. Now, this album has some fantastic musicians, and I'm including Godwin Louis, Russell Hall, Christian Sands, Samir Langus, and Alex Wentz, just to name the many in this few. I had a chance to sit down to talk with Etienne, and we discussed how the Geechee community is very, very connected to Mother Africa and what he learned about the music style. We also reflect on some of the most important parts of how this connects to Africa. We had a chance to sit down and break bread and reflect on not only this music, but also talk about how we're going to have to educate the next generation of music moving forward. So sit back, relax, enjoy Etienne Charles live at this year's 2025 Pittsburgh International Jazz Festival. You keep doing it, man.
I'm trying.
This is a labor of love.
It is.
And you keep pushing the envelope of education of island people, the African descent, and the Caribbean descent. Talk about this record.
This is Creole Orchestra, which came out last year, and then we have Gullah Roots, which came out this year. And, they both come out of similar veins in terms of, I'm on this quest, I'm constantly fascinated with our history. And, our history, by our history, I mean our history as people of African descent, people of the African diaspora. And through my many explorations, I'm finding so many more links that connect us, simply because the history is not really taught the way it's supposed to. It's like with the Gullah people of South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, and Northern Florida. They came to the Caribbean in the 1800s, and some of the very first African captives that were sold to plantations in Georgia and in South Carolina were sold from plantations in the Caribbean. So right there, we immediately are like that, So for me, exploring it with music is the way I do it.
This new album, you have Samir Langus on your record.
I do.
You've got Louis Godwin who's playing. You've got Russell. You've got piano player Christian Sands.
And Axel Tosca.
Yeah, you've really put a whole myriad of ethnicity behind this project.
Yeah. Plus vocals, we have a choir led by Damian Sneed, who's from Augusta, Georgia. So you got Michael Kilgore as one of the lead soloists in there. Alana Goodo, who's from Texas, Louisiana. That's what she says, because she's from that part of Louisiana. I'm blown away. Shanae Campbell is a great vocalist as well on the album. Kiana Parler, who's a Gullah singer, she's from Charleston, South Carolina. Quentin Baxter, he's an incredible percussionist and producer. And for me, it was a large project in the sense that there were so many people on the album, but it felt like a small group project. Samir, is a great Ghanaian musician. He's from Morocco. I believe he's from Marrakesh, and there were so many links to West Africa, and as a result, Morocco, through my Gullah Roots research. That's why I had to get the Gimbri on there for Bilali.
I saw Samir about 6 years ago, and I just was blown away just how he interprets his instrument to. It's a beautiful thing. And on this album, it's like he's adding some really beautiful melodies to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a special musician. He also plays khakeb, which is the castanets. Yeah. And we had a great time recording him on this album. His sound on the Gimbri is infectious. It puts you in a trance, and a lot of people have been telling me that Bilali is a very special track for him.
Wow. And also, if my memory serves me correct, one of the co-producers on this record is the co-founder of Ranky Tanky.
Yeah, Quentin Baxter, exactly correct. He's one of the original members of Ranky.
I love that band.
Me too.
We're in an era now where they're trying to erase black culture from everything, from the books we read to everything, politics to religion. And what I love about what you're doing, and we've interacted over the years on the Pace Report, the education of oneself is very important of keeping this music alive. And you are in a very beautiful space because you are now an assistant professor at the University of Miami.
I'm full professor.
Oh, okay, my bad. Okay, so now you are in an era now where you have to preach this.
Yeah, academia is interesting because it gives you a platform and it gives you access to libraries. People forget that these things called libraries. Everybody's quick to Google, but you can go to the library and there's so much information. And so I'm really grateful for University of Miami for for giving me access to not just libraries, but great, hungry students who really are eager to know the true story behind not just the music, but the migrations that caused the music scene. You know, things like understanding the relationship between the Great Migration and the jazz that happened in the 40s, 50s, and 60s as a result. You know, and how things changed as, you know, because that's a point of study. You know, and you see these large migrations to Detroit, Pittsburgh, where we are, Columbus, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, you know. Yeah. And as a result of that, you see the music change, you know, and it's literally these influxes of people from the South. That's what made Motown happen. That's what made the Detroit jazz sound happen. That's clearly what made, you know, the Funk Brothers of Detroit. And then you got Cincinnati. You got Bootsy Collins. You got the Ohio players. You know, you got all those players that played with, all those guys that played with James Brown. Yeah. You know, I believe the Isley Brothers are from Ohio as well.
They are from Shaker Heights, I believe Shaker Heights, Ohio.
They're from, you know. Yeah. So there's, you know, and then you got Chicago as well, like in terms of
the blues.
In terms of the Great Migration, Chicago, and Minneapolis. You know, people forget, you know, those riverboats, right? The riverboats will come up to here, and so it's like. And then you look at all the music that comes out. You got Minneapolis, you got Prince Rogers Nelson. You know, who people might know is Louis Hayes' first cousin.
I did not know that.
So Prince's father was a jazz musician. And his sister, Prince's father's sister, Prince's aunt, was Louis Hayes. I believe was Louis Hayes' mother.
Wow.
Just feeling nice. When a voice said, Mister, you're brave to be bringing your girlfriend on top of the grave. You talk about run, and then he bust my head. The living running from the dead. I go say, no, run me lad. Come let me play a game I can. And then now I'm running the truth. The foot stick up in a mango room. I fall down inside the tomb. Godwin Louis on the alto saxophone. Well, he screamed, I wake. That's when the whole world shook. Is now I in trouble. I swear I see the devil. I see a tall white horse on top of big black broncs. When I bought up over the dead, the horse say, Kitch, come go to bed, you talk about. And then he bust me head. The living running from the dead. I go say, no, run me land. Come let me play a game I can't. And there's now I'm running in truth. The foot stick up in a mango root. I fall up inside that tomb. Baxter Tusk on the piano, ladies and gentlemen.
Resistance. We have to fight that, and music has been the strongest advocate for resistance. Have you met any resistance at the University of Miami? And also, because, again, we're talking about migration, and Miami, parts of South Miami was very important for the slave trade. How has that interaction been?
I mean, University of Miami has been nothing but supportive and receptive to my research. And I mean, they've been part of the reason that I feel so comfortable to do this research and release these albums, because it's a great research institution. And where Miami sits, there's so much history there. There's so much black history in Miami. You got Overtown. People don't know that Muhammad Ali met
Elijah Muhammad. Oh no,
Malcolm X in Miami.
Right.
Actually, he was Cassius Clay at that time. So there's a lot of history in Miami, and specifically in Black Miami, with Overtown and the Hampton House, and so these types of stories, like what we're doing with Gullah Roots, and finding places to do the research and to have a place to have discourse. Because for me, a big part of research doesn't make sense unless you have a way of communicating that research and creating discourse. Because people have questions. This lady came up to me after the show today. She was almost in tears, and she said, I had never known the stories of these Gullah people. And I was like, well, this is one of the reasons that schools are trying to control what they're trying to control, because there's a power in knowing. There's a power in knowing where you come from. There's a power in knowing the descriptions and knowing what people dress like and knowing what songs they sang. And through my simple avenues, I'm trying to make sure that more of us know where we come from.
You're a griot.
Yeah.
You're a griot. I'm a griot.
You are a griot for sure. You tell the stories. I play the trumpet. But with respect to resistance, I'll say this. It's an interesting time right now. But for me, I'm lucky because my music is simply a reflection of these stories. But existence is resistance. And for me, in a nutshell, if I disagree with you and you sitting right here and you don't move, that's you resisting me.
Right.
So at the end of the day, for me, a big part of what I do, what we do as a band in Creole Soul, is our sonic landscape and where we go in the show is a way to energize people so that they can then go into their own workplaces or schools or wherever and pass on the word.
thing that I always respected about you, Brother Charles, is that you take the camera and you take recording devices everywhere you go to study and get the stories and understand as a backup of the stuff that you're trying to dissect. I want to talk about this record. Going into Uncharted Land, what were some of the most craziest things that you found out about the Gullah people, as well as their musical connect to Africa?
Well, one from their musical connect is very, you know, they call it the double clap, you know, just, and you know that's a rhythm that you find all over the Caribbean, all over West Africa. And you know, in Haiti they call it the kata, and some people call it the habanero rhythm. So different sounds. So that immediately was a very Caribbean thing happening. The accent of the Gullah people, you know, the way they speak English has a very strong Caribbean bounce to it. Well, you know, one of the biggest surprises to me was when I learned about the Americans, which are a group of Gullah people that ended up in Trinidad, where I'm from.
How did that happen?
It was the War of 1812. And you know, the thing about history, again, history is not taught in a way for people to get into it, to like see it as like a movie or a story. But you know, anytime there's a war, somebody loses.
They have to go somewhere.
And they might not have to go somewhere else, but they have to continue living, and then their children come along, and their children might have a little bit of beef about something. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, but so many times the story is told from the victor's side or from the American side. And so the War of 1812 was this war that happened between the British and the Americans. And a lot of black people fought for the British. You know, in many of the different wars that happened, or battles as parts of wars, you had these soldiers for hire. Some of them came from the Caribbean, like Henri Christophe was a soldier in one of the battles outside of Savannah, Georgia, during the American Revolutionary War. So this is American history, and then all of a sudden you have all these sometimes free, sometimes enslaved black people on the battlefield. So, you know, these are the stories that kind of really blew my mind. You know, the fact that the War of 1812, the reward for their service and their loyalty to the British was free land in Trinidad and Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Halifax?
Yeah, for real. So, yeah, so they you know, the region in Trinidad is called Moruga. That's where they settled, and you know, they're known as Americans because it was the Americans. You see? So that, you know, so that fascinated me. Is like we literally have Gullah people in Trinidad.
Wow. Musically, what are some things that you want to work on moving forward with this history? Because this is heavy, and this is a very interesting conversation that we're having, and we need to have this conversation because everyone interprets history and music differently, as we talked about. What is it that you want to map out here in the next 5 to 10 years?
I just want to continue to do what we're doing, which is, you know, bringing the gospel to people, bringing, you know, I mean, we're coming out of this pandemic, so allowing people to know that it's safe to come outside and enjoy music and put your hands in the air and dive and dance and feel good, because, you know, so much of that was crushed in the last 3-4 years during severe lockdown. So that's on the basic level. The next level is through my recorded music, you know, with the liner notes and whatnot, kind of having these documents in place for people to kind of learn more about what informed my music. And then when we're on stage, like, you know, tonight, I told the story of Watch Night, you know, so people could understand what it is. And, you know, and then they close their eyes.
I'm really digging the artwork. I'm really so happy that you and a lot of I tell you what, Brandy Younger is also really doing some very impressive artwork. You're putting a lot in your independent products, in your music. How hard and how easy is this now at this stage of your career?
I'll say it's never easy. I would say, especially as, tariffs come, prices of product go up. But for me, it's just understanding that I'm fighting against a bigger machine, like the machine of streaming. As has really decimated
the
income for people who sell recorded music. And so as a result, I don't put my music on those platforms. I just don't see it as fair. And those platforms aren't doing enough to try to fix it. And so, that's why I do these beautiful LPs and CDs, because, people gravitate to beautiful art. They see that, a good photograph, an interesting storyline in the art. Roland Nickel, the artist that does my records, he always has a storyline. Like, he hears the music, and then he comes with a storyline, and he goes from there. So we try to take people on a journey through this LP, this record. And people are so receptive. We're lucky enough to be able to move units at every show. And I think because some people really remember and feel drawn to LPs.
Are you shocked that vinyl's back?
I've been releasing albums on vinyl since 2016, so I've been doing it a while. San Jose Suite came out on vinyl in 2016, so to see that it's on the constant rise is, for me, it's very enlightening, and it's a great counter to the phone listening. It's like you get to sit down, you put the wax on, you sit right in the middle between the speakers, and then the music comes and you do where we want you to hear it.
That'll do it again for this very special edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here, the 15th Pittsburgh International Jazz Festival here in downtown Pittsburgh. I'd like to personally thank the incomparable Etienne Charles for his time. Make sure you support his current album, Gullah Roots, which is on his Culture Shock Records imprint. For more information on his upcoming tour dates, club dates, or to order the album and CD, please visit him on social media by way of Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, I'd like to personally thank Miss Janice Burley and her staff for their warm hospitality, putting on a fantastic jazz festival. You guys are doing a fantastic job in preserving and presenting the culture, not just to people here in Pittsburgh, but to music fans from all over the world. For more information for the 2026 Pittsburgh International Jazz Fest, please visit them online at pittsburghjazzfest.org for information on the Jazz Train, the Taste of Jazz, the VIP tickets for both days, as well as lodging. Also, I'd like to personally thank Ms. Clairlyn McClare for Clairlyn McClare Public Relations for arranging my artists' interviews for the entire weekend. As crazy as it's been, thank you for everything that you have done, Carolyn. As always, people, I can't stress this more than enough. Please like, share, and subscribe to my videos here on YouTube and Vimeo, as well as leave comments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Until next time, peace.